Welcome. Could you please tell me what's your name and why are you here?
My name is Giorgio Baresi. I'm an Italian designer. I'm here because I'm very passionate about QS-related topic. I've been following the movement since it was born in the US. And I came here for the first time 1.5 years ago. And I'm happy to be back. In the meantime, I started the QS Milan meetup. And I'm here also to meet other organizers and to keep the connections with the community.
Yeah. So what fascinates you about QS?
Well, the thing that fascinates me the most is the fact that we can use technology in a meaningful way. So the fact that we can use sensors and intelligence and cloud services to improve people's lives and to make them better. And if you think about how things were up until 10 years ago, 5 years ago in the healthcare industry, you had to go to a hospital to get a medical test, and now you can have a medical test on a sofa in 5 minutes, and that's amazing. I mean, I'm just wondering how things will evolve in the next 5 years. So very excited.
Do you have any ideas about that? How it will evolve?
Well, I think that it's now time for the QS to become mature. So it has been a geeky movement up until so far. So lots of experimentation, lots of cool new stuff emerging, lots of personal projects, and now it's really the time to make it mainstream and to take it to the next level and to make it available also to non-geeks.
So how do you make a thing like this mainstream?
Well, I think that it's mostly about delivering information that is meaningful and purposeful. That's the biggest issue. So now we have the technology, which we didn't have up until 5 years ago. So sensors and technology is there. We just have to make sure that we don't overwhelm people with unnecessary information and we deliver the right information at the right time for the right purpose. So that's the next big challenge that we have to face.
And do you feel that it is for everyone? Because I see people walking around here with wristbands. Well, they're not really very obvious, but also with things on their heads and things down here, and they measure all sorts of things. Can you see everyone walk around with things like this?
Not necessarily. We need to wear something as invasive as Google Glasses or visible sensors. I mean, if you look at the situation now, most of the people already carry on in their pockets a mobile phone. And a mobile phone already includes so many sensors that even if you don't purposefully track something, you are already tracked. So personally, I use an application that is called Moves, and that application runs in the background and tracks wherever I go, which means of transport I've taken, and this helps me keeping track of how long I bike, how long I walk, and how many hours I spend on a train commuting, and how many hours I spend in the office working. And so I don't have to wear anything special, it's there running in the background. Sometimes it's a little bit scary to see all of that information, but I do it on purpose because I like to experiment. So yeah, I don't see it as an issue.
Are there more things you track in any way?
Well, I track my movement through my Nike wristband. I track my runs through another Nike running wristband, and I track my happiness with my happiness application. So actually, I'm here to present a new application which is called In the Flow. That allows me to track my life goals. So
Your life goals?
yeah. So I can declare which are my life goals, like living a healthier lifestyle or being a good husband, and or making an impact, so improve people's lives. So those are my three main life goals, and I keep track of them by assigning to each of these life goals some very practical goals that I have to carry on every week. And by doing that, I try to give a direction to my life and to give more meaning to my life this way. So every week I track what I do in order to actually get closer to those goals.
So why do you? Because normal people just live and they well. They just don't think about things like that.
Yeah.
But why is it necessary to think about things like that, or to achieve your life goals?
Well, I think that there could be maybe two ways. I'm purposely making an extreme example, but you can rather be passive and have a passive attitude towards life, or you can embrace it and shape it in your own way by giving the meaning that makes the most sense to you. So what I wanted to do is not to passively, to passively live life, but to embrace it and decide what I wanted from it, and then devise a plan to get closer to what I wanted. So and that's easy. I mean, it's just a matter of thinking about that and do a little bit of planning on how to reach it. And so you don't have to be a superhero. You don't need a PhD at Harvard to have it. It's just a matter of sitting down, thinking about that, and then be a little bit constant in what you're doing.
And when you track it, because you probably track it yourself,
Yep.
are you always going closer to your goal, or are there weeks or even months that you go down and that the goal is further away than ever?
Well, it depends on the goal, of course. My goals are fuzzy enough and long-term enough, so you don't really have a sense in the short term of the movement. So how far you're reaching, how fast you're reaching them. Of course, I have the sensation that I'm moving towards them. Otherwise, I would have already given up, or I would have changed my goal in the meantime. But
In that way, you're very flexible.
But life has to be flexible. I mean, many things happens, and you have to be ready to change your plan, right? If you stick to a too rigid plan, then the risk is that you get stuck at the first hiccup, and then you don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah. On a broader level, why is quantified self important?
As I told you at the beginning of the interview, I think that we really have the possibility to improve people's lives. So yesterday we saw a speaker who is affected by Parkinson's disease, right? And you can see how quantified self can truly improve people affected by a chronic disease that is terrible like that one in the short term. So we don't have to wait until a new drug is released, which usually takes much longer, but we can use existing technology in order to concretely improve lives of people who are affected by such a terrible disease. And if you apply the same thinking to diabetes or to Alzheimer or to cardiovascular diseases, I think we can really have the technology here, so we don't have to invent anything new. We have the technology to concretely improve these people's lives and make it more enjoyable and I would say normal in a way.
So what will be the impact on society?
Well, I would say that you mean at which level?
Well, if everyone would measure themselves and track themselves, what will change in society?
I think that we have the opportunity to raise the awareness of people towards big topics like healthcare, for instance. So now we have the privilege, at least in the Western world, to have a pretty good healthcare system all over the place. But the problem is that this healthcare system, as it is designed now, it's due to become very, very expensive and not sustainable over time. So I think that if we start to raise awareness towards certain topics, we have the possibility to actually prevent or make people be aware of what are the risks of their lifestyle, for instance, and then start to concretely prevent certain diseases that are spreading so fast. I'm thinking about diabetes in the US, where it's catching up at an incredible speed, and it's just a matter of changing certain habits, changing certain behaviors. If you can make people aware of the fact that drinking 2 liters of Coke a day can increase the chances to have a chronic disease in the future, then we can truly have an impact on how chronic diseases will affect us in the future. And I think that's the biggest challenge at the moment.
Is quantified self mainly important in the health sector, or are there
Well, that is to me the most interesting sector because, as I said, we are at a tipping point in how healthcare will have to change. So we are facing a very critical moment at the moment in which, as I said, the system is not sustainable anymore, and the technology is there, and it's just a matter of finding the right mix to change, to improve the outcomes of healthcare without changing the costs or without radically changing the quality of what we get.
Yeah, I'm thinking all the time. Well, we all know that certain lifestyle is very unhealthy. That we don't have to eat too much. That we should move. Everyone knows this. But some people just don't want to know. They just don't want to hear. Can quantified self be an answer in those situations?
Of course.
But would they want to measure themselves? Would they want to track themselves?
I don't think that tracking is necessarily a pathway you have to take. Yesterday I was talking about my application and how I came to it, and I started as a tracking project, right? So I started to track my mood because at that time that made the most sense to me. And after 6 months, I found actually nothing interesting out of my data. So I started to wonder whether tracking was actually the right thing to do in that case. Well, I don't suffer from any condition. I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. So I just did it for the sake of doing it. And what I realized after 6 months was that tracking was just a rear view mirror. So it was telling me how I was without providing me necessarily interesting insights on how to change. So that's why I started to see the problem from a different point of view. So it was not about necessarily tracking, which is an important part of QS, but not the only one. And I started to say, okay, how can I change my life? And then I started to view it, to view the issue from a different point. So I started to say, okay, I need to set goals. Right, and these goals not necessarily have to be precise, defined. They could be fuzzy and long-term, but at least I can see where I want to go, and then I can shape my life in order to reach them. So back to an obese who doesn't want to track himself. So it's not about tracking the weight necessarily. Yes, he can track his weight to have an assessment of why he needs to change, but then back then he needs to probably understand why obesity could be a problem, and then he needs to give new meaning probably to his life. So if he now gets a reward or pleasure from eating food, he can actually understand that a different life is possible, and he can find new meaning from a different objective in his life. I think I know I'm oversimplifying it, but rather than looking back, I would say that the answer is to look forward and understand that a different life is possible, and then devise a plan to reach that other pathway.
Yeah. Do you go to conferences like this a lot?
Not a lot, I would say. I handpick my conferences very carefully. I would say I attend 5 to 6 conferences a year.
Yeah.
So
and mainly about QS?
No, not mainly about QS. I attend different types of conferences, mostly in the healthcare space, and QS to me is strictly related to healthcare. That's why I'm here as well.
Yeah. And if you compare this conference to others, what did you find?
Well, as I said at the beginning, the thing that interests me the most about this conference is that it's not that much about business. It's mostly about content and new things.
Yeah.
So this allows us to have a mid-term overview of how the industry is moving, and then bring it back home, and then try to apply it also to the business.
That's very interesting
side.
Because at a lot of other conferences, the business model is always the first
Exactly.
question that's asked.
How do you make money?
Yeah, and that's not a question you hear over here.
Exactly, which is good in this context because, of course, you have to find a way to monetize data and to monetize the services that we see here, but that's not necessarily the only thing, right? So you can do a lot of experimentations, you can do a lot of of new cool projects without necessarily having to find a way to monetize it. And then maybe a way will come in the years. But I like also to breathe this climate, this air, and find a lot of sources of inspirations for my next projects.
Yeah, so this is the phase before the business model, and this is the interesting experimenting
Exactly.
phase where it can go everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what you like.
That's what I like in this context, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you.